Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we are talking about the internet here in the United States, but truthfully, this is essentially about the world. We are too dependent on a few big tech providers, and a recent article by the Associated Press is actually prompting this thought in my brain, as I have this thought about twice a year, and I want to put it out on video. But here's what's going on, and think about it this way, in terms of the massive Amazon outage that we just saw the other day. Think about it this way. Robotic vacuum cleaners wouldn't start. Doorbell cameras wouldn't actually start watching your door. They couldn't phone home. Some of the deliveries from Amazon, multiple deliveries actually, were canceled because their logistics, simply couldn't get it right due to the outage. Netflix went down. Disney went down. News sources went down and couldn't publish because they couldn't access their websites. This was a major outage of Amazon's cloud computing service network this past Tuesday, and it severely disrupted services for a massive amount of U.S. companies from small to huge for hours, obviously raising questions about the vulnerability of the internet and the concentration of internet resources in the hands of just a few outfits. Amazon's not alone, but they are a massive player. And so with that backdrop, the first thing we're going to talk about is, how did this actually happen? Amazon still really isn't saying. They basically mentioned some technical things on their website on Tuesday about API functionality and all of that, but Amazon is historically notorious for not telling you what's actually happening when they have an outage or a problem. They're usually like, oh yeah, we see it, we're working to resolve it, all good. And that's pretty much about all we're going to get. So I'm really not holding my breath on hearing an actual detailed explanation on what happened with Amazon Web Services. But this incident affected mostly the eastern United States, but impacted everything like I just mentioned, but also things like airline reservations, auto dealerships, payment apps, video apps, games, even Amazon's own video service went down on the eastern side. This is obviously a huge, huge issue. Now, the question then becomes, do we have too many eggs in one basket? Cybersecurity experts have been warning for years about potentially ugly consequences of allowing a handful of big tech companies to actually dominate the key parts of internet operations. I would be one of those as well. I mentioned this exact point when level 3 got hit and half the internet in the United States went down a few years back before the pandemic. I mentioned this again last year in November of 2020 when Amazon had their last AWS outage of this level. I mean, look at Facebook, for example. What they lost time for about 6 hours about a month or two ago. They lost $1 billion an hour just as a platform and for advertising. Forget the social media side. It's a platform for advertising. That is nothing compared to the amount of loss of revenue that Amazon was seeing in their customers. Among the influential organizations to now start rethinking these approaches on depending on a single cloud provider was, interestingly enough, the Pentagon. That's right, the Department of Defense in the United States was using a single hosted cloud provider. In July, they canceled a disputed cloud computing contract with Microsoft that would eventually been about worth $10 billion or so. That was very contentious. The belief on Amazon, who sued the Department of Defense, was that at that time, then President Trump basically ordered the Department of Defense. He's the chief, obviously he's the commander-in-chief, or was, I should say, the commander-in-chief of the U.S. military, not to use Amazon because of his feud with their founder, Jeff Bezos, and so they awarded it to Microsoft. Amazon sued. So, and they canceled that contract, so instead what they're going to pursue is a deal with both Microsoft and Amazon, and possibly other cloud service providers such as Google, Oracle, and IBM, another of the three massive providers out there. Now, the NSA, or National Security Agency, earlier this year also awarded Amazon a contract with a potential estimated value of about $10 billion as well to be the sole manager of the NSA's own migration to cloud computing. This contract by the agency will be known as Wild and Stormy, and the General Accountability Office of the federal government this past October sustained a bid protest by Microsoft, finding that certain parts of the NSA's decision were, and I quote, unreasonable, although the full decision at this moment is classified because, well, it's the National Security Agency. But this is the point, is that I can't tell you how many times I've walked into organizations when we're doing infrastructure assessments, security assessments, risk assessments, both technical and financial, or we're doing this to a compliance framework like FedRAMP, ISO 27001, CMMC, etc. A lot of these are designed to actually mitigate risk. I was literally on David Sparks' CISO series program this past Friday talking about cyber risk and how to quantify it with literally one of the guys that wrote one of the books on cyber risk. It was a very fascinating conversation. You should go check it out. But my point here is that I can't tell you how many times I've walked into organizations that are offering things like cloud service providing, CSP and FedRAMP speak, and they're only backboned on one platform. Oh yeah, we're on Microsoft Azure, and Microsoft Azure just backs itself up, and so, we're all good. Well, yeah, what happens if Microsoft goes down? Why aren't you replicating to IBM or AWS or somewhere else? And it's conversely, oh yeah, we're on Amazon. Amazon's so huge, it just backs it up for us. Well, yeah, but what happens if Amazon goes down? Do you have redundancy in Microsoft or IBM or any one of the others? Or maybe you're on IBM and you don't have redundancy. The point being is that we have to stop looking at essentially not just how we are delivering services accurately to our customers, meaning they're connecting to our apps, they're connecting to our platforms that are being backboned on the AWSs and the Microsofts of the world. We also have to really start thinking about those internal contingencies, because when Amazon goes down, it goes down. And that's a huge problem. We have so many eggs in one basket right now that by virtue of that, we are literally seeing complete stoppages of access for millions and millions and millions of people. This is a global problem. And so if you are creating cloud content, if you have you're a provider of an app or an application that is tied into the cloud, I highly recommend going redundancy. I understand the cost in those things, but having a backup to your AWS or your Azure or your IBM or your Google or whatever you're using is a huge thing. So I would really get on that. But I think this really underscores the point is that we have concentrated so much resource, so much capability into one or two major providers out there that when they go down, it affects everybody. And by virtue of that, we have problems then on the security side. Imagine not being able to deliver accurate information to, let's say, a population in the middle of a panic because Amazon went out. That's what we're talking about here. Not to mention we have a few massive service providers that are providing internet to most of the country. Think about Comcast, Verizon, Time Warner. These are massive, massive players that have millions and millions and millions of customers. And if all of Comcast goes out, there are millions and millions of people left in the dark because Comcast also does phones. Same with Verizon. So this is a huge problem. When the internet was originally conceived of, there was a lot of confederation, a lot of independent services. You could do it yourself. You could spin up a website in your house if you had the capability to do that. And we are losing that. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing in the sense that we can also offer better performance, better security, standardizations. Obviously, the cloud has a lot of redundancies built in, but having this basically sit on a sole provider is potentially damaging, not just when the provider goes down, but it's damaging to your business. And I think that's something that we need to understand. How much money are you losing, in 6 hours when Facebook goes down and you can't advertise to people that will be clicking on your website to go buy whatever you're selling? Or if your app goes down and nobody can use it for productivity, how many customers are you going to lose in a 6-hour period while you're down? These are things that we need to quantify as we're talking about risk, and Amazon just really underscored that. So we need to stratify, and if you have a cloud service, make sure you're backing it up with another. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP, and please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please stay private. Thanks, everyone.